The champagne flute trembled slightly in my hand as I heard Omar's voice carry across the crowded terrace. He was speaking in Arabic, assuming I couldn't understand. After 3 years together, he still didn't know I was fluent in 7 languages. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. She stamps passports at the State Department, he laughed, gesturing dismissively toward me. Very important work, making sure the ink doesn't smudge. His cousin Tariq grinned, sipping his whiskey. And she supports you on that salary? How generous of her family's money. I turned away, pretending to admire the Georgetown skyline from our penthouse balcony, the balcony I'd purchased with my own salary. The salary of the director of the Central Intelligence Agency's Counterterrorism Center. A salary Omar knew nothing about because my real job was buried under layers of classified security protocols and a carefully maintained cover story. She's sweet, though, Omar continued in Arabic, his voice softening slightly. Naive, trusting. It makes things easier. My fingers tightened around the crystal stem. Easier for what, exactly? Omar, Habibi. His mother called from inside, still speaking Arabic. Come help with the music. Your fiancé looks lonely out there anyway. She probably can't even follow our conversation. I smiled politely as Omar brushed past me, planting a distracted kiss on my cheek. You okay, babe? You look tense. Just tired, I replied, maintaining the persona I'd built so carefully over 3 years. Sophia Chen, mid-level State Department employee. Boring, conventional, forgettable. The truth was far more complicated. I'd met Omar at a diplomatic function where I was actually working undercover, tracking a terrorist financing network. He'd been charming, successful, the owner of a prestigious import-export business. Our relationship had seemed natural, easy. I'd kept my cover because that's what we do in my line of work. Relationships are complicated enough without adding classified intelligence operations into the mix. But now, standing on this balcony listening to him mock the very cover identity that protected national security, I felt something shift inside me. My phone buzzed. A coded message from my deputy director, Marcus Webb. Prism meeting 0600, Category Alpha situation. Your presence required. Category Alpha meant imminent threat. Actionable intelligence. The kind of situation that made my pulse quicken with purpose. I typed back a confirmation, then slipped the phone into my clutch. The movement caught the attention of Omar's Aunt Layla, who approached with a sympathetic smile. You must feel so lost when we all speak Arabic, she said in heavily accented English, as if speaking to a child. Omar says you only know English. Such a shame. You seem like a smart girl. I manage, I replied, the irony almost painful. Last month, I'd negotiated a prisoner exchange with Iranian intelligence officers entirely in Farsi. 2 weeks ago, I'd personally interrogated a Saudi operative in flawless Arabic. Yesterday, I'd briefed the president on emerging threats in North Africa. But here, at my own engagement party, I was playing the role of a confused, monolingual American who couldn't possibly understand the language flowing around me. Omar is such a good man, Layla continued, patting my hand. He'll take care of you. You're very lucky. Many women would want a successful man like him. I know, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. I'm very fortunate. Through the glass doors, I watched Omar holding court with his male relatives and business associates. He was handsome. I'd give him that. Tall, with the kind of confidence that came from old money and older family connections. His import-export business moved luxury goods across the Middle East, Europe, and North America. At least, that's what he'd told me. What he didn't know was that 6 months ago, his company's name had appeared in an encrypted communication we'd intercepted between a known money launderer in Dubai and a logistics coordinator for Hezbollah. It could have been nothing, a coincidence. His company was large, with hundreds of employees and thousands of transactions. But I'd learned long ago that in intelligence work, coincidences were often just patterns we hadn't recognized yet. So I'd done what any responsible intelligence director would do. I'd launched a quiet investigation. Nothing official. Nothing that would appear in formal reports. Just careful watching, subtle inquiries, the kind of deep background work that my position allowed me to authorize without raising flags. What I'd found had been troubling. Not conclusive, but troubling. Shell companies in Cyprus that owned shell companies in Panama that ultimately connected to Omar's business. Financial transfers that seemed legitimate until you noticed the amounts were always just below reporting thresholds. Business meetings in Istanbul, Beirut, and Tehran that Omar had never mentioned. And then there were the phone calls he took in the middle of the night, stepping out onto this very balcony, speaking in rapid Arabic that he clearly believed I couldn't understand. I'd started keeping notes, recording conversations, building a parallel investigation that existed only in my encrypted personal files. Because if Omar was dirty, if he was involved in the very networks I'd spent my career fighting, then I needed to know. Not just as a CIA director, but as the woman wearing his ring. Sophia. Omar's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He was waving me inside, his smile broad and public. Come meet my business partner Rashid. He just flew in from Dubai. Rashid al-Mansouri. I'd memorized his file 3 months ago. Suspected facilitator of arms deals. Connections to Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Never enough evidence to prosecute, but enough smoke to suggest fire. And now he was in my home, shaking my hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Charming, Rashid said in English, though I'd heard him speaking perfect Arabic moments before. Omar has told me so much about his American fiancé. You work in... what is it? Government administration? State Department, I replied, keeping my voice light and slightly uncertain, as if I were intimidated by these successful men. Just basic visa processing. Nothing exciting. Ah, Rashid nodded, his interest clearly waning. Perfect. How? Practical. As they steered the conversation toward business, I played my part. The quiet fiancé, the woman who didn't understand the rapid Arabic flowing around her. The simple government worker who wouldn't recognize the coded language of international smuggling if it slapped her across the face. But I caught every word. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. They were discussing a shipment. Electronics, supposedly. High-value semiconductors being moved from Taiwan through Singapore to Damascus. The conversation was careful, oblique, but I'd heard enough similar discussions in interrogation rooms to recognize the patterns. Omar glanced at me occasionally, checking to see if I was following. Each time, I smiled blankly, sipping my champagne, playing with my engagement ring, a perfect performance of ignorance. Your fiancé is very patient, Rashid said, switching to Arabic. Does she always smile so agreeably when she has no idea what's happening? Omar laughed. Sophia? She's perfect. Beautiful, accommodating, and just smart enough to be interesting but not smart enough to be complicated. And her family connections don't hurt. Her uncle is a State Department official. Could be useful for expediting certain documentation. My smile never wavered, but inside something cold and sharp was crystallizing. He was using me, not just mocking me, but actively planning to exploit my supposed family connections. Connections that didn't actually exist. My cover story was entirely fictional, created by CIA fabricators. But Omar didn't know that. He just saw an asset. A useful fool? The party continued for another 3 hours. I made small talk with Omar's relatives, all of whom spoke to me as if I were slightly slow. I listened to more conversations in Arabic, piecing together fragments of information that would go into my classified reports. I played the perfect, oblivious fiancé while mentally cataloging every detail that might matter to national security. By the time the last guest left at midnight, I had enough new intelligence to justify a full-scale operation. Omar collapsed onto our leather sofa, loosening his tie. God, I love my family, but they're exhausting. You were a trooper tonight, babe. I know you get lost when we all speak Arabic. It's fine, I said, beginning to clear glasses. They seem to enjoy themselves. Rashid liked you, Omar said, and there was something calculating in his tone. He's an important business connection. It's good that you made a nice impression. Happy to help, I replied, carrying champagne flutes to the kitchen. Actually, Omar called after me, he might need a favor. Something with visa processing. His nephew wants to study in the US, but there have been some complications. I told him you might be able to speed things along. I turned back to face him, keeping my expression neutral. Omar, I process tourist visas. Student visas are a completely different department. But you could make some calls, right? Pull some strings? He stood, approaching with that charming smile that had first attracted me. For me? For us? Rashid is about to finalize a major deal that could double our revenue. This small favor would go a long way. I'll see what I can do, I lied smoothly. He kissed my forehead. That's my girl, see? This is exactly why we work. You understand how to help without making things complicated. After he went to bed, I stood in our darkened living room, staring at the city lights beyond our windows. Somewhere out there were threats I'd spent my entire adult life fighting. Terror cells planning attacks, rogue states pursuing weapons programs, networks of criminals and ideologues who wanted to hurt Americans. And now one of them was sleeping in my bed, wearing my ring, expecting me to be too stupid to notice. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, need to brief you before the meeting. Coffee at 05:30? Usual place. I confirmed. The usual place was a secure facility in Northern Virginia, disguised as an office park. The coffee was terrible, but the SCIF, Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, was state-of-the-art. I had 5 hours before I needed to be there. I spent 4 of them in my home office, the one room Omar never entered because he assumed I just paid bills and browsed social media. In reality, it was where I kept my secure laptop, my encrypted communication devices, and my classified files. I pulled up everything we had on Omar's business, financial records obtained through intelligence sharing agreements, travel patterns, known associates, every detail I'd been quietly collecting for months. Then I opened a new file and began typing my report. Everything from tonight. The conversation about semiconductors, the request to help with visa manipulation, Rashid's presence, all of it carefully documented, sourced, and classified. By 4 a.m., I had a 20-page report that painted a deeply concerning picture, not conclusive proof of criminal activity, but enough circumstantial evidence to justify the next phase of investigation. The question was whether I could stay objective, whether I could investigate the man I was supposed to marry without letting personal feelings cloud my judgment. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. Sophia Chen, age 36, daughter of Taiwanese immigrants, raised in California, PhD in international relations from Georgetown, 15 years in intelligence work, 7 years running counterterrorism operations, 3 years as director of the agency's most critical division, and absolutely nobody in my personal life knew any of it. The cover story was elaborate. My real job was hidden behind layers of false employment records, fabricated references, and carefully maintained social media presence. As far as anyone knew, including Omar, I was exactly what I claimed. A mid-level bureaucrat processing paperwork in a windowless government office. The truth was that I commanded a budget of billions, oversaw operations in 40 countries, and had personally authorized strikes that had eliminated some of the world's most dangerous terrorists. I'd sat in the Situation Room during crisis moments. I'd briefed presidents, negotiated with foreign intelligence services, and made decisions that had literally changed the course of history. But I couldn't tell anyone. Not my parents, who thought I was wasting my Georgetown PhD on government administration, not my childhood friends, who pitied my boring career, and certainly not Omar, who mocked my fictional job while planning to exploit it. At 5:15 a.m., I left a note for Omar saying I had an early meeting, then drove through empty Washington streets to the secure facility. Marcus was already there, looking exhausted. "Long night?" I asked, accepting a cup of the promised terrible coffee. "Serious situation is heating up," he said, gesturing me into the SIF. "But that's not the category Alpha. We intercepted communications about a shipment coming through Mexico. High-grade explosives, enough to level a federal building. The chatter suggests a target in D.C. within the next 2 weeks." My personal problems suddenly felt very small. What do we know? The explosives are being moved by a sophisticated network. Multiple cutouts, professional operations. We've identified 3 possible entry points along the border and 2 potential targets in the city. He pulled up satellite imagery and communications intercepts. We spent the next hour going through every detail, assembling our response strategy. This was the work that mattered. This was why I'd sacrificed a normal life, maintained elaborate cover stories, and kept secrets from everyone I knew. "There's something else," Marcus said, his tone shifting. "The logistics coordinator for this operation has a shell company that does business with..." He pulled up a financial chart. "Al-Mansouri Enterprises. Rashid Al-Mansouri. Same guy who's been on our watch list for arms dealing." My stomach dropped. "How recent is this connection?" "Transactions within the last 6 months. Could be legitimate business, could be something else. Why? Does the name mean something to you?" I hesitated. This was the moment. I could tell Marcus that Al-Mansouri had been in my home last night, that he was my fiancé's business partner, that I'd been running a parallel investigation into Omar's activities. Or I could stay quiet and handle it myself. "I've seen the name in the files," I said carefully. "Let me dig deeper." It wasn't technically a lie, but it felt like one. The morning meeting was intense. 20 senior officials from across the intelligence community, all focused on preventing an attack that could kill hundreds. We reviewed options, authorized resources, coordinated with law enforcement. It was the kind of high-stakes situation where every decision mattered. I drove home at noon, exhausted but wired with purpose. Omar was still asleep. He rarely rose before 10 on weekends. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching him sleep, and tried to reconcile the man I'd thought I knew with the man I was increasingly certain I didn't know at all. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We should talk about your fiancé's business activities. Meet me at the usual place. 1 hour. C. Catherine Morrison, my counterpart at the FBI's International Corruption Unit." We'd worked together on several investigations. If she was reaching out about Omar, that meant the Bureau had its own concerns. I changed quickly and headed back out. The usual place was a bench in Rock Creek Park, secluded enough for sensitive conversation, but public enough to avoid suspicion. Catherine was already there, feeding pigeons with studied casualness. I sat beside her. "Your boy is dirty," she said without preamble. "We've been watching his company for 8 months. Money laundering, sanctions evasion, possible arms trafficking. We're about to move on him, but then I saw something interesting in the background checks." "What?" He's engaged to someone named Sophia Chen, State Department employee. Very boring, very conventional. Except when I ran her social security number, it pinged about 15 different security flags. Your legend is good, but not good enough to fool our deep background systems. She turned to look at me directly. So I called in a favor and found out who you really are. And now I'm wondering why a CIA director is playing house with someone we're about to indict. I felt the world tilt slightly. My cover was blown, at least to Catherine. It's complicated. I'm sure it is. Look, I don't care about your personal life, but if you've got intelligence about his operations, we need to coordinate. This can't be two separate investigations anymore. She was right. I'd been trying to keep my professional and personal lives separate, but that was no longer possible. Omar wasn't just my fiancé anymore. He was a target of a federal investigation, possibly connected to the terrorist plot we were trying to stop. I need 24 hours, I said. I'll bring you everything I have, but I need to do this right. By the book. Catherine studied me for a long moment. 24 hours. Then we move. With or without your cooperation. And Sophia, get out of that house. If he's involved in what we think he's involved in, you're sleeping next to someone who won't hesitate to kill you if he discovers who you really are. I drove back through the city, Catherine's warning echoing in my mind. She was right. If Omar was involved in terrorist operations, if he discovered my real identity, I'd become a liability, a loose end to be eliminated. But I couldn't just disappear. Not yet. I needed to know the full extent of his involvement, whether he was an active participant or an unwitting facilitator, whether the man I'd spent 3 years with was a criminal or just a fool. And I needed to know before I made the biggest mistake of my life, or caught one of the biggest threats to national security. When I got home, Omar was awake, dressed in casual designer clothes, scrolling through his phone. He looked up with a smile that still had the power to make my heart skip. There you are, I was about to call. Rashid wants to have lunch with us. Is that okay? I forced myself to smile back. Of course, that sounds nice. As I went to change clothes, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was trapped between two identities, two lives, two impossible choices. In 12 hours, I would have to decide, was I Sophia Chen, the devoted fiancée willing to believe the best about her future husband? Or was I the director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, whose oath demanded that she put national security above personal feelings? The answer should have been simple, but standing there, looking at the engagement ring on my finger and thinking about the classified files in my office, I realized nothing about this situation was simple at all. And somewhere in Washington, a terrorist cell was moving explosives toward a target, coordinated by a network that might include the man I was supposed to marry. The clock was ticking. The restaurant Rashid had chosen was Le Diplomate, an upscale French bistro in Logan Circle. Ironic, given that some of the most sensitive diplomatic negotiations in Washington happened at tables, just like the one we were being led to. I'd changed into a simple navy dress, the kind of outfit that helped me blend into the background. Omar's hand rested possessively on my lower back as we wove through the lunch crowd. Rashid was already seated, accompanied by another man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of careful posture that suggested military training. Sophia, darling, Rashid stood, kissing both my cheeks in the European style. You look lovely. May I introduce my associate, Karim Nazari? Nazari. The name triggered immediate recognition. Iranian national, suspected IRGC Quds Force operative, last known location was Frankfurt 3 weeks ago. What the hell was he doing in Washington? Pleasure, I said, extending my hand with a shy smile. I'm sorry, I didn't catch where you're from, Mr. Nazari. Originally Tehran, but I've lived many places. he replied smoothly, his English accent suggesting British education. Currently based in Vienna, I'm in the pharmaceutical export business. Pharmaceutical export. The oldest cover story in the book for moving precursor chemicals and dual-use materials. We ordered, Omar choosing for both of us without asking, another habit I'd tolerated for too long, and the conversation flowed in that particular mixture of English and Arabic that had become familiar. They were being careful, switching languages strategically, but I caught fragments. The shipment arrives Tuesday, Rashid said in Arabic, buttering a piece of bread. Port of Baltimore. The documentation should clear customs without issue. Omar nodded, sipping his wine. The warehouse is ready. My contact at the Port Authority has been very cooperative. My blood ran cold. A corrupt port official. That's how they were moving contraband into the country. The explosives Marcus had mentioned, were they part of this shipment? I pushed my salade niçoise around my plate. The perfect picture of a woman thinking about nothing more serious than calories. Your fiancé is very quiet, Nazari observed, switching to English. Perhaps our business talk bores her. Sophia understands that men have important matters to discuss, Omar said, reaching over to pat my hand condescendingly. She's very supportive of my work. How fortunate, Nazari replied, but his eyes were assessing me in a way that made my instincts scream. This man was trained to spot threats, to read people. I needed to be very, very careful. I actually find business fascinating, I said, allowing a hint of uncertainty into my voice. Omar's always traveling to such interesting places. I wish I understood more about import-export work. It seems so complicated. It's really quite simple, Omar said dismissively. We move products from places where they're made to places where they're needed. Basic economics. But all the regulations, I pressed, playing the curious fiancé. Don't you have to get special permits? I know at the State Department even tourist visas have so many rules. Rashid and Nazari exchanged a glance that lasted half a second too long. The regulations are manageable, Rashid said carefully, when you have the right expertise and the right connections. Speaking of connections, Omar interjected, and I recognized the tone. This was the setup. Sophia, I mentioned that Rashid's nephew needs help with a student visa. Have you had a chance to look into it? All three men were watching me now. This was a test. I made some calls, I lied, keeping my voice apologetic. But student visas really aren't my department. The process is very different from tourist visas. There's a whole separate office that handles them, and honestly, I don't have any contacts there. Omar's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I thought you said you'd help. I want to help, I said quickly, with just the right note of anxiety. But I don't want to get in trouble at work. I could lose my job if I tried to interfere with a process I'm not authorized to handle. Of course, Rashid said smoothly, though disappointment flickered across his face. We wouldn't want to jeopardize your position. Perhaps there's another way we could benefit from your expertise. What do you mean? Well, he leaned forward slightly. You must process many visa applications. Surely you see patterns. People who travel frequently between certain countries. That kind of information could be valuable to businesses like ours. Understanding travel trends, market opportunities. He was asking me to commit espionage, to hand over classified information about visa applicants. My hands remained steady on my fork through sheer force of will. I don't think I'm allowed to share that kind of information, I said hesitantly. There are privacy rules, very strict ones. Even general trends? Nazari pressed. Nothing specific. Just observations about which countries are seeing increased visa applications. That's not really classified, is it? Omar's hand covered mine, squeezing slightly too hard. Babe, we're not asking you to do anything illegal. Just share some general insights. To help my business. To help us. I let the moment stretch, appearing to wrestle with the decision, then nodded slowly. I suppose general trends wouldn't hurt anyone. Nothing specific about individuals, though. Of course not, Rashid smiled. We would never ask you to compromise your integrity. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The rest of lunch passed with lighter conversation. Omar's upcoming trip to Istanbul. Rashid's new house in McLean. Nazari's opinions on Washington's restaurant scene. All perfectly normal, except for the undercurrent of menace I could feel radiating from Nazari. As we were leaving, Omar excused himself to the restroom. Rashid took a phone call, stepping outside. That left me standing awkwardly with Nazari in the restaurant's foyer. "You're very beautiful," he said suddenly in Persian. I kept my expression blank, uncomprehending. He was testing me. He repeated it in English. "Very beautiful. Omar is a lucky man." "Thank you," I replied, uncomfortable but not understanding. "Perfect." "I have a daughter about your age," he continued, still in English but watching me carefully. "She also works in government. Junior position, nothing important. But she's ambitious. Perhaps too ambitious. Sometimes ambition makes people do foolish things." The threat was barely veiled. I played oblivious. "I'm sure she'll do wonderfully. Government work can be very rewarding." Indeed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Though sometimes the rewards come from unexpected places. Sometimes the simple job is just a door to something more significant. Before I could respond, Omar returned, clapping Nazari on the shoulder. "Ready? We should get going." In the car ride home, Omar was quieter than usual. I could feel him thinking, calculating. "You could have tried harder," he said finally. "With the visa thing." "I did try, Omar. I just don't have access to that system." "You could get access, make friends with someone in that department. You're there every day." "It doesn't work like that. The departments are completely separate, different security clearances, different databases." He sighed heavily. "Sophia, I need you to understand something. My business is at a critical juncture. The deals I'm making right now could set us up for life. But I need partners who can see the bigger picture, who can be flexible." "I am flexible," I said, hating how my cover identity made me sound weak. "I'm trying to help, but I can't do illegal things." "Nobody's asking you to do anything illegal," he snapped. "Jesus, why do you have to make everything so complicated?" This is exactly what my mother said. American women are too rigid, too concerned with rules. I bit back about 10 different responses, settling for silence. Omar had never mentioned his mother criticizing me before. How many conversations had there been behind my back, in Arabic, about my inadequacies? When we got home, he immediately disappeared into his home office, the one room I'd never been able to bug because he kept it locked and had recently installed a sophisticated alarm system. That alone had raised red flags in my investigation. I retreated to my own office, locking the door and pulling up the secure laptop. A message was waiting from Marcus. "Update on the Baltimore situation. We've identified the ship. Arrives Tuesday. Customs intercept planned. Need your authorization." Tuesday. The same day Rashid had mentioned. This couldn't be coincidence. I typed rapidly. "Do not intercept. Observe only. I have reason to believe this shipment is connected to a larger network. We need to follow it to the end users. Authorization granted for surveillance operation only. Will brief you tonight at 2000 hours." His response came immediately. "Negative. Risk too high. If that ship contains explosives..." "It's not explosives," I typed. "Different shipment, same network. Trust me, I have assets in play." A long pause then. "Your call, Director." "But if this goes sideways?" "It won't," I replied, with more confidence than I felt. I had just made a command decision based partly on intelligence and partly on personal involvement with a suspect. It was exactly the kind of conflict of interest that could end careers, or worse, get people killed. My phone buzzed. Catherine Morrison. Running out of time. FBI wants to move Monday. Need your intel now. Monday. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours to decide whether to burn my cover, end my engagement, and potentially spook a terrorist network before we could roll it up completely. I began typing a detailed report, documenting everything from the party to today's lunch. Every conversation, every suspicious comment, every red flag. As I wrote, I tried to separate my feelings from the facts. Was Omar actually involved in terrorism, or was he just a greedy businessman dealing with shady partners? Was I being objective, or was betrayal coloring my analysis? A knock on my office door made me jump. I closed the laptop instantly, switching to my cover computer with its boring spreadsheets and mundane emails. Sophia? Omar's voice, conciliatory. Can we talk? I opened the door. He was holding a bouquet of roses, my supposed favorite, though I'd actually told him I preferred peonies. He'd never remembered. I'm sorry, he said, stepping into the room. I was harsh in the car. You're right to be cautious about your job. I just get stressed about business sometimes. It's okay, I replied, because that's what my cover identity would say. No, it's not. He set the flowers down and took my hands. Look, I know I don't always appreciate what you do, and I know my family can be intense, but you're important to me. This is important to me. He gestured to the ring on my finger. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd thought I was falling for 3 years ago, vulnerable, genuine. Then I remembered him laughing at my expense, mocking my supposed stupidity in a language he thought I couldn't understand. Rashid and Nazari, they're important business connections, he continued. But you're my future. I shouldn't have put you in an uncomfortable position about the visa thing. Forget I asked. Really? Really? We'll find another way. There's always another way. The words sent a chill through me. There's always another way. To get the visa approved? Or to get what they needed from the State Department? I have to make a call, he said, checking his watch. Business emergency, but tonight, let's order from that Thai place you like. Watch a movie. Just be us. Okay? That sounds perfect. He kissed me, and I forced myself not to recoil. How many lies were we telling each other at this point? Him, pretending I was important while planning to use me. Me, pretending to be someone I wasn't while investigating him for terrorism. After he left, I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of all my decisions pressing down. Then I returned to my secure laptop and made the call I'd been dreading. The face that appeared on my encrypted video screen belonged to Director Patricia Hammond, my immediate superior, and one of only 5 people in the agency who knew every detail of my undercover status. Sophia, she said, reading my expression instantly, you're compromised. Not exactly, I said, and explained everything. The party, the lunch, the connections to the Baltimore shipment and Nazari's presence in D.C. Patricia listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You should have reported this months ago, she said finally. The moment his business appeared in intercepts, you should have disclosed the relationship. I know. You've potentially compromised an investigation, put yourself at risk, violated about 6 different protocols. I know, I repeated. But Director, if I'm right about this, we're not just looking at sanctions evasion or money laundering. This is a network with direct connections to IRGC and possibly active terrorist operations on U.S. soil. If we move too fast, if we spook them before we understand the full scope. You're too close to this. Patricia cut me off. You're emotionally involved with a suspect. That's not just a conflict of interest, it's dangerous. For you and for the operation. Then pull me out, I said. But don't shut down the investigation. Let me brief the team, hand over everything I have, and step back. But we can't let the FBI move before we understand what we're dealing with. The FBI has jurisdiction over domestic crimes. If they want to arrest these men for money laundering, they're not money launderers, I interrupted. Or they're not just money launderers. Nazari is Quds force. I'd stake my career on it. And he's in Washington for a reason. The timing, the conversations about shipments, the attempts to recruit me as an asset. This is operational planning. Something big is coming. And Omar's business is part of the infrastructure. Patricia studied me through the screen. We'd worked together for 12 years. She'd promoted me, mentored me, trusted me with increasingly sensitive operations. Now I was asking her to trust me again, despite my obvious compromise. You have until Tuesday, she said finally. The shipment arrives then. We'll surveil it as you suggested, but if at any point I assess that you're making decisions based on personal feelings rather than intelligence, you won't, I promise. I'd better not, because if you're wrong, if we let a terrorist attack happen because you were trying to protect your fiancé. I'm not trying to protect him, I said sharply. If he's guilty, I'll put the handcuffs on him myself. But I need to know the full truth first. About the network, about the operation, about everything. Then get me that truth. Fast. And Sophia? Once this is over, regardless of outcome, we're going to have a serious conversation about your fitness for this position. The screen went dark. I sat in my office as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. From somewhere in the apartment, I could hear Omar on the phone, speaking rapid Arabic. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost aggressive. My personal phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the pattern. A bureau phone, routed through scramblers. It's Catherine. We have a problem. Our surveillance team just watched your boyfriend meet with someone we've been tracking for 6 months, Hassan Khalil. Ring any bells? Hassan Khalil, Lebanese national, known coordinator for Hezbollah's external operations unit. Holy shit. When? I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. 20 minutes ago, coffee shop in Arlington. They were together for less than 5 minutes. But there was definitely a handoff. Package. Looked like documents. We couldn't get close enough for photos without burning the surveillance. Where's Omar now? Headed back to your building. He should be there in about 5 minutes. I looked toward my locked office door. Omar would walk through that door in 5 minutes, carrying documents from a Hezbollah operative, still believing I was too stupid to be a threat. Catherine, I need 12 more hours, just until the shipment arrives tomorrow. Then you can move. Can't do it. Khalil's involvement changes everything. This isn't white-collar crime anymore. It's material support for terrorism. We have to move now. If you arrest them now, you get 3 men and 1 shipment. If you wait, we might get the entire network. The financiers, the logistics coordinators, the operational planners. Please. A long silence. If there's an attack tomorrow because I listened to you, there won't be. I'll make sure of it. How? I'm the director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, I said. Trust me, I know how to stop a terrorist attack. I heard Omar's key in the front door lock. Call me in 12 hours. Catherine said, and watch your back. These people kill assets who outlive their usefulness. The line went dead as Omar walked into the apartment. Sophia? He called out. Ready for that Thai food? I emerged from my office with a smile on my face, my heart pounding like a war drum. Starving, I said. I'll order while you change. As he headed to the bedroom, I saw it. The slight bulge in his jacket pocket. The package from Hassan Khalil. Documents that might contain plans, coordinates, target information. Everything we needed to stop whatever was coming, and it was 20 feet away. In the jacket of a man who still thought I was too simple to understand his world. Tomorrow was Tuesday. The shipment would arrive. The operation would unfold. And I would have to choose, finally and irrevocably, between the woman I'd pretended to be and the agent I'd always been. But first, I had to survive the night. That night, I lay awake beside Omar, listening to his breathing settle into the rhythm of sleep. The jacket hung on our closet door, its pocket holding secrets that could save lives or end them. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed with practiced silence. Years of field training had taught me how to move without sound, how to become invisible in familiar spaces. The floorboards that creaked, the door hinges that groaned. I knew them all and avoided them. Omar's jacket was expensive Italian wool, still holding the faint scent of his cologne. My fingers found the envelope in the inner pocket. No markings, sealed with wax, old-school tradecraft. I didn't open it. Instead, I photographed it from every angle with a specialized camera that could capture microscopic details, then carefully used a fiber optic scope to examine the contents without breaking the seal. Years of technical training made the process smooth, efficient. Inside were shipping manifests, customs documents, and warehouse locations. But more importantly, there were coordinates, a location in Washington, D.C., and a date, November 3rd. 2 days from now. My blood turned to ice as I recognized the address. The National Mall, Veterans Day ceremony. The president would be attending. I resealed the envelope using a heating tool designed for exactly this purpose, returned it to the jacket, and went to my office. The next 3 hours were a blur of encrypted communications, emergency protocols, and mobilizing every asset we had. By 5 a.m., I had alerted the Secret Service, coordinated with FBI, and initiated a full tactical response. The shipment arriving in Baltimore today wasn't explosives. It was weapons, high-grade military hardware being smuggled in for an assassination attempt. At 6 a.m., Omar's alarm went off. I was back in bed, pretending to be asleep. "Big day," he said, kissing my forehead. "I have to go to Baltimore, business with the shipment. I'll be back tonight." "Be safe," I murmured, playing my role one last time. After he left, I dressed quickly, not in Sophia Chen's conservative work clothes, but in tactical gear. I pulled my service weapon from its hidden safe, checked the magazine, and holstered it. Then I made one final call. "Marcus, this is Director Chen. Authorization code Sierra Alpha 77 Delta. Initiate Operation Sandstorm. All assets are greenlit. I'm heading to Baltimore." The drive to the port took 40 minutes. I arrived to find it transformed into a fortress. FBI, ATF, Homeland Security, and my own CIA tactical teams had surrounded the warehouse where Omar's shipment was being delivered. Catherine Morrison met me at the command post. "Your fiancé just arrived," she said, "along with Rashid, Nazari, and 3 unknowns. They're inside the warehouse now." "The weapons?" "Confirmed. Crate inspection shows Russian-made sniper rifles, modified for maximum accuracy. Ammunition designed to penetrate ballistic glass. This was a professional hit team being assembled." Through surveillance monitors, I watched Omar directing workers, completely comfortable in his role. No nervousness, no hesitation. This wasn't a man being manipulated by dangerous partners. This was a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "We're ready to move on your order," Catherine said quietly. "But I need to know, are you okay to be here?" I thought about the past 3 years, the lies I'd told, and the lies told to me. The engagement ring that had symbolized a future that never really existed. The man I'd thought I might love, who had never existed at all. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I replied. Let's take them down. The operation was surgical. Tactical teams breached from 4 entry points simultaneously. Omar barely had time to register what was happening before he was on the ground, hands zip-tied behind his back. I walked into the warehouse as agents secured the scene. Omar's eyes found me, and I watched confusion give way to shock as he took in my tactical gear, my weapon, my authority. "Sophia," his voice cracked. What is this?" I knelt beside him, close enough that only he could hear. Then I spoke in perfect, flawless Arabic. "My name is Director Sophia Chen, Central Intelligence Agency Counterterrorism Center. You have the right to remain silent, though I doubt you will. You're being charged with conspiracy to commit terrorism, material support for terrorist organizations, and conspiracy to assassinate a U.S. government official. You're looking at life in prison without parole." The color drained from his face. "You speak Arabic?" "Fluently, along with Farsi, Mandarin, Russian, French, and Spanish. I understood every word you said at our engagement party, every joke about my simple job, every conversation you had with your terrorist associates, every time you called me naive and stupid while planning to use my supposed government connections. I wasn't," he stammered. "We have everything, Omar. Financial records, communications intercepts, surveillance footage of your meeting with Hassan Khalil, the documents in your jacket. Yes, I photographed those too. And now we have the weapons you were going to use to kill the president." Rashid was shouting in Arabic from across the warehouse, demanding lawyers and claiming diplomatic immunity. Nazari was silent, his face a mask of professional acceptance. But Omar was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the person who stops people like you," I said simply. "I'm the person you should have been terrified of from the moment we met. But you were so busy mocking my simple job that you never considered I might be something more." I stood, gesturing to the agents. "Get him processed, and someone call his mother. Tell her that her son's American fiancé wasn't too rigid about rules. She just had different rules to follow." Catherine found me outside the warehouse 20 minutes later. The November air was cold, helping clear my head. "Hell of a performance in there," she said. "How are you holding up?" "I've been undercover for 3 years in my own relationship," I replied. "I think I'm still figuring out how I feel about that." "For what it's worth, you made the right call. If you'd told him the truth or pulled out earlier, we might never have uncovered this network. The counterintelligence value alone is massive. We've identified 17 members of this cell, including 3 who were already inside the country preparing for the attack. And the president? Completely secure. Veterans Day ceremony is canceled as a precaution, but he's safe. You stopped a political assassination, Sophia. That's going in the history books, even if your name never appears in them." I looked back at the warehouse where Omar was being loaded into a federal transport vehicle. He caught my eye one last time, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not love. We'd never really had that. Not even respect. Just the dawning realization of how thoroughly he'd been outplayed. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Oval Office receiving a classified commendation that would never appear on any public record. The president shook my hand firmly. "Director Chen, your service potentially saved hundreds of lives, including mine. The country owes you a debt it can never fully repay." "Just doing my job, sir," I replied. "About that," he said. "Director Hammond tells me you're considering resignation. I'm asking you not to. We need people like you. People who can make the hard choices, maintain cover even when it costs them personally, and still come out with their integrity intact." I thought about it. About the cost of the life I'd chosen. The relationships I couldn't have, the truth I couldn't tell, the person I could never fully be in public. "I'll stay," I said finally. But I'm done with deep cover personal operations. From now on, I'm exactly who I appear to be. Fair enough. And director? Next time you get engaged, maybe run a background check first. Despite everything, I laughed. The trials were closed to the public, held in secure federal courts. Omar and his associates were convicted on all counts. Rashid got 40 years. Nazari was deported to face charges in Europe. Hassan Khalil died in a shootout during his arrest in Lebanon. Omar received life without parole. Before sentencing, he asked to speak with me one last time. Against the advice of everyone who cared about me, I agreed. We sat across from each other in a secured conference room, separated by bulletproof glass. He looked diminished in his prison jumpsuit, nothing like the confident businessman who'd mocked my simple job. I keep trying to figure out when I should have known, he said. What signs I missed? All of them, I replied. That was the point. Did you ever actually care about me? Or was it all just an operation? I considered lying, giving him the easy answer, but we'd had enough lies between us. At first, you were just my cover, a convenient boyfriend who explained why I was at diplomatic functions. But somewhere along the way, I started to care. I started to believe that maybe you were different, that maybe I could have both lives, the agent and the woman. I paused. Then you started mocking me in Arabic, started treating me like I was stupid, started planning to use my supposed government connections for your terrorist network, and I realized that the man I thought I cared about had never actually existed. I wasn't trying to hurt Americans, he said. The politics are complicated. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut him off. You were going to help assassinate the President of the United States because you thought it would advance your cause. There's nothing complicated about that. It's terrorism, pure and simple. And you thought you'd get away with it because you assumed the simple, stupid American girl processing visas would never be smart enough to stop you. He was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now you spend the rest of your life in a federal supermax prison. Your assets are seized. Your family's reputation is destroyed. Your associates are either in prison or dead. And the terrorist network you were part of is completely compromised. We rolled up 17 cells across 4 countries because of the intelligence you led us to. And you? I go back to work. I continue doing my simple job, protecting America from people like you. I stood to leave. He called after me. Sophia, I did love you, in my own way. I know you won't believe that, but it's true. I turned back. You loved the idea of me, the compliant fiancé who made you feel powerful. You never loved the real me, because you never bothered to find out who I actually was. That was your fatal mistake. 6 months later, I was sitting in my actual office at CIA headquarters in Langley. No more pretending, no more cover stories. My assistant buzzed me. Director Chen, your 3 p.m. is here. Dr. Sarah Walsh from the Psychological Services Division. Send her in. The agency required therapy after operations like mine. 6 months of processing, working through the psychological impact of maintaining deep cover, of having my personal life completely compromised by my professional one. How are you feeling today? Dr. Walsh asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Honestly? Relieved. For the first time in 3 years, I can just be myself. No more pretending to be someone I'm not. No more hiding my intelligence, my capabilities, my real job. Have you considered dating again? I laughed. Maybe someday. But next time, I think I'll try being honest from the start. Lead with, "Hi, I'm Sophia Chen, CIA Director." See how that works out? It might work out better than you think. Maybe it would. Or maybe this job wasn't compatible with normal relationships. But that was okay. I'd made my choice years ago when I took the oath to protect and defend. Everything else was secondary. My phone buzzed with an urgent alert. Another situation developing, another threat to assess, another operation to plan. The work never stopped. The threats never ceased. But neither did we. I picked up the phone. Director Chen, what have we got? As I listened to the briefing, I felt it again. That sense of purpose that had driven me from the beginning. This was who I was. Not Sophia Chen, the simple State Department employee. Not even Sophia Chen, the fiancé. I was Director Sophia Chen, and I had work to do. The engagement ring sat in an evidence locker somewhere, tagged and catalogued as part of the case file. I didn't miss it. It had represented a lie, a fantasy, a relationship built on mutual deception. What I had instead was the truth. The real me, finally visible. The woman who spoke 7 languages, commanded covert operations across the globe, and had prevented a presidential assassination while her targets mocked her intelligence in a language they thought she couldn't understand. Omar had been right about one thing. I did have a simple job. I simply protected America, and I was damn good at it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.